thus far very well received. And so tonight, what we're going to be talking about is a new streetscape plaza that would be a temporary space for gathering in the city. This came about in particular because West Hollywood has finished its park, and as part of the master plan, there is proposed an AIDS monument. It's called Stories the AIDS Monument at the easterly portion of West Hollywood Park along San Vicente, directly across from the Pacific Design Center. And this space has a pulpit speaker's podium integrated into it that's oriented out to the street. And those of you who have been in West Hollywood long enough know that the San Vicente Santa Monica Boulevard area has historically been a locus for voice, for actions, or urgent, how do I say this, for requests for change, for public outcry. It's always been a space about gathering. And what's happened over years is that these, impromptu gatherings have sort of melded with some planned street closures for certain amounts over the year. And it's turned the space into a quasi-public space. Right now, there's between 20 to 30 street closures a year in the stretch that we're talking about for Pride, for Carnival, for Elizabeth Taylor Foundation, for the Elton John event. There's many, many events throughout the year where there are already closures. And what we realized is that there was an opportunity to say, if we're going to have these closures, why not make it a true public gathering space designed for these temporary closures? Coupled with that, there's been concerns expressed from the community about speeding along San Vicente, especially on weekends. In non-commute times, there's been some very high speeds recorded in this stretch. And so the staff was looking at this as maybe an opportunity to add to the open space for the city. And if you think about most urbanized areas, most cities do have significant gathering spaces that can hold, 1,000 or 2,000 people. And it's something that in West Hollywood, we really don't have that kind of a space outside of West Hollywood Park itself. So tonight, we're excited to introduce to you our consultants from Melk Design. Melk is a worldwide known leading and innovative design firm that is really specialized in urban design and landscape architecture. They're a group that's very creative, very energetic, believes strongly in what West Hollywood is all about. And we feel very privileged that they're taking on this challenge because it is a challenge. There's a number of aspects that need to be looked at in any type of street closures, including, excuse me, I think somebody needs to mute, thank you. In any type of temporary street closures even, there's considerations about first responders, there's considerations about public transit, there's a lot of other intangibles that go into it. So we've wanted to have a process that really thinks through everything comprehensively, looks at all the different variables and intangibles. And so tonight, our friends from Melk, in particular, its principal and founder, Jerry Van Eyck, together with Allison Chekowitz, who's going to be the project manager and our project landscape architect, and Savina Romanos, who's Melk's associate director. They're going to be sharing their first thoughts. The way it's set up is this is going to be a initial presentation of how we got to this point, and then we're going to leave time at the end to have some focused discussion on what might be working and what might not be working, so they will lead you through this exercise. To remind everybody, this is a Zoom platform, so if you do have comments to make at the end, please do raise your hand, and we'll go through and make sure everybody gets a chance to offer their thoughts. This is an initial concept, so we expect that it will change a little bit based on comments, and you know, a good process is that it should change. This is just a chance to see the initial approach. And with that, I'm going to welcome Jerry Van Eyck to take you through their ideas and their process. So Jerry, take it away.
It'll be Savina's introducing.
Okay. Savina.
Actually, Rick, I'm going to just say hello and say good evening to everyone. I'm Savina, the Associate Director of Milk. It's nice to, I don't see anyone actually, but it's nice to see a bunch of boxes with names. Hopefully we'll see your faces later. Thank you so much for being here. Really, it's probably one of the most fulfilling aspects of being designers of the public realm is this, the interaction and engagement with the public, who are ultimately the users of the spaces we create. So we look forward to this continued process of co-authoring a design for this very special project and portion of San Vicente Boulevard. But in order to have, you know, the most effective open discussion today, just an overview of how our dialogue is going to happen in this Zoom room. So just please keep your microphone muted, unmute when we do call upon you, and I'm going to do my best to also mute in case that accidentally happens. It's all fine. Then we're going to have a very nice recap and discussion presentation, we hope, and then after the discussion portion, after the presentation rather, the discussion portion, we'll run, just raise your hand. We're going to take a running list of who's done what, and we'll call upon you to speak. If you don't feel like speaking, also okay, just throw something in the chat box. We're going to be monitoring that as well. Thank you so much again in advance for your time. Jerry?
Yeah, this is...
Actually, Rick already introduced us, so let's just go right into this. It's all good. Thanks, everybody.
I'm Jerry. I can't wait to talk, but you know, this was Savina, and there's another dear colleague of mine on the Zoom as well, Allison. Can you provide your insights of the event recap that we had already?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So again, my name is Allison. Really glad to be here. So as Jerry hinted, we hosted our initial community event on October 29th. It was an open house style at West Hollywood Park. It was a really terrific event. So here's some photos from that event. You'll see we had some boards, some general informational boards, and we had a hands-on activity as well. Here are some of those informational boards. You know, we talked about the project site, introduced the concept of a shared street. In the center, we talked about the project premise that Rick really summed up well earlier. And on the right, we shared some fascinating history that we learned about the site, that prior, when West Hollywood was the town of Sherman, it was actually this site and the PDC site, Pacific Design Center site, was a rail hub, which formed the socioeconomic core for the town of Sherman. Really interesting. A lot of people found that fascinating as well. And then this is the hands-on event that we hosted. So the question we had for participants was which elements and which styles contribute to a great gathering space, right? So we had those boards mocked up. And then this is the actual hands-on part. So we had decks of each of those images, the styles and the elements, had little magnets on them, and people put together their compositions for what they felt contributed to a great gathering space. And then we recorded these kind of photographs of how people, you know, crafted those visions, right? So we talked to almost 30 people. We really appreciated these West Hollywood neighbors who are already already starting to come up with the composition. And here's a zoom in, right, of one of these boards. So this person that I had the pleasure of speaking with was really emphasizing tree canopy, bike lanes, creative lighting, water savviness, experiencing nature, and destination. Destination we heard a lot too. And so next, we're just going to walk you through the summary of that hands-on event activity. So here's a simple bar graph to show you how often someone took one of these images and its correlating word and put it on their blackboard. So in the purple, you're looking at the elements that they thought created a great gathering space, and in the pink, the styles that they thought also contributed. And while each of these are really valid responses, especially when we start to look at this area of emphasis on the right, we as designers start to gain some direction on what the community feels would help this part of San Clemente Boulevard become a really great gathering space. Another way that we can digest this information that we heard from the community is with a word cloud. So here are the elements, again in purple, that were most popular with the community. So we like to do, as designers, like to squint our eyes a little bit to see what kind of words are jumping out of the page for us. So again, we see tree canopy, architectural shade, being responsible with water, what we're calling water savviness, trellis, creative lighting for really exciting nighttime experience. And here are those styles, right? Destination is coming up really big, playful, protective, safe and secure. And then when we put all of those purple elements together and those pink styles together, and we do this squint test again, we're starting to get direction on how this space can better serve West Hollywood. And yet another great way to digest this information is when just like in the word clouds, when the size of the word correlated to how popular a word was with the community, the size of these images are also correlating to how often those words came up, right? So here's that in the center, that big photo was, tree canopy was really emphasized by many people.
So
Next,
yeah. How do we capture all these fantastic anecdotes, ideas for program, and of course also the ideas of what people are gravitating towards in terms of the vibe, right, the feel, the style of the place into a concept design, trying to listen to all of you and trying to really come up with something that addresses everything that lives with the, let's say, the community. The community of the city of West Hollywood, WeHo, right? So we want to, of course, come up with a design, a concept design that is uniquely to the city of West Hollywood, to WeHo, and that cannot live anywhere else, cannot exist anywhere else, right? So how do you make something unique is really look at the context, the situation, the life of the place. West Hollywood certainly has a vibe to it. And what is clear to us is that we have to come up with something really, really special and not something basic, right? That doesn't fit in the community. So with that, idea, we also have a canvas to work on, which is our site. Our site is not the full block yet, right, Rick? From Melrose to Santa Monica is really that centerpiece, which is already, let's say, closed off for traffic sporadically throughout the year when there's events or gatherings programmed and occurring here in this area. It's basically that sort of buffer in between WeHo Park and the PDC Plaza, where the new Stories 8 Memorial is currently being constructed. Right, so it's really an important spot for the city that we're looking at. We defined from there a list of key drivers and strategies that will help us one, create a design for both a functioning streetscape as well as catering to a condition where already occurring gatherings when the streets is closed off for traffic, which occurs occasionally, you know, can be accommodated. Those four strategies are very much derived from the idea exercise that Ali was just explaining. We did with some of you, hopefully all of you. Number one is really make this a safe place, right? So traffic calming is important, and create a condition where, you know, where safety basically always prevails. Then we will explain to you in a second what breadcrumb effect, what that means, but that's basically a strategy very much applicable to this project. Number three is create a condition that offers maximum flexibility when there is an event, when the street is closed off, which occurs sometimes. You know, you want something that functions well for that event. Of course, during most of the year, it's just a surface street with a twist, right? This extra memorable element to it. And number four, create for all conditions a really comfortable place. Also, really, you know, brought up in the ideas exercise. Establish a microclimate. The street canopy, architectural shade was mentioned, and even the presence of water. So these four strategies became very, very important for us, and basically categorized our design process. The first one, traffic calming and safety. It became clear to us that the traffic, you know, this is not a Formula One racetrack, right? So this is an area that is, wants to be pedestrian centric. And for that, we're looking at raising the entire street, for example, create a speed table. Some of you might be familiar with the term woonerf, which is basically another word for shared street, where different mobilities coexist in a very safe way. We can use textures, textured paving, rumble surfaces, etc., to create a sort of traffic calming effect. That's a proven method as well as patterns, right? Where you know, where the use of patterning and perhaps even colors in the street surface gives a sort of, let's say, elevated awareness of where to navigate. Here in this diagram is basically a summary of that. Currently, the San Vicente section, the profile is this, right? We have basically a wide carriageway in between two sidewalks. And what we are going to propose is establish a streetscape. It's basically a long speed bump, right? That is textured. We hope to use unit paving for that to create this rumble strip effect. And then in addition to that, add, of course, a median because we want that separation of lanes, and we want that separation of the different mobilities to create this safe environment. So there's a lot of like contradictions already occurring, but we'll address that in a minute. Strategy number two, the breadcrumb effect. So basically the breadcrumb effect, if we look at the current streetscape condition, is really to turn this place into a destination by introducing eye-catching beacons, as we call them. So maybe even like vertical elements, maybe even those architectural structures that were mentioned in the ideas exercise, to basically create sightlines and to create this method of drawing people in and through the project. So basically to enhance navigations towards the center of this block and really emphasize this notion of turning this place into a destination. Those beacons, and this was kind of, let's say, very much popular in the exercise that we did in the first public engagement event, could potentially be those, very sculptural and iconic shaped canopies that can place this place on the map, literally on the, let's say, the cognitive map globally. When people think of West Hollywood, they think of this place. Strategy number 3, and here's where it gets really interesting in terms of contradictions. When we look at the street that would function in a safe way and a sort of remarkable way that has this element of traffic calming in it. Here you can see the street table again. We kind of want in order to have a good programmable space, not that, right? We want a sort of basically a vast open area. The better the functioning of an event space is, let's say, the more flexible it is when it's completely open. Of course, during most of the year, it's just a street, but still, there's this inherent contradiction going on. How do we deal with that? And we actually, as you will see in the following slides, focus on that quite a bit. So we came up with this idea, right? We have that median, but median is not a static situation. It's actually chopped up in little chunks, little median elements, let's say, that can actually literally move and create a different configuration during an impromptu gathering when this area needs to be closed off. Could be a market, could be a rally of some sort. And we really like the idea that it refers also to the history of the site. So movable median planters, let's say, literally on train rails to create this large open space. And this is not of course rocket science. We think we can really borrow or use the exact same technique and components of trams. And as you know, in many cities around the world, this is really like perfectly integrated in a sort of an urban pedestrian environment. So that's kind of what we thought would be really great in terms of functionality, but also, let's say, in terms of the poetry of the space, right? These movable median planters. Strategy number 4, actually a no-brainer, right? Create a microclimate. If the place is pedestrian-centric, then the area needs to be comfortable. And believe it or not, we have currently 4 trees on this stretch of San Vicente. And our ambition is to really amp that up and create a beautiful green canopy for the place. Like I said earlier, there's of course I'd say that the contradiction between the green streetscape, where it's comfortable, where there's a microclimate and a functioning space for impromptu events. But microclimate is very important. And with trees, immediately we think of biodiversity. And Ali will talk about this in a second. And besides biodiversity, what comes next is habitat creation. We can literally bring wildlife back to the place. Basically, our project becomes, interesting if we look at it this way for us, because it's really about regenerative ecology for the place. Ali?
Right. So Thanks, Jerry. So as Jerry was talking about, we heard a lot in sort of that hands-on activity at our initial community outreach event, tree canopy, right? Architectural shade, how do we create that microclimate? So we went ahead and did a quick study of what the tree canopy is in this part of the city of West Hollywood. Learned that, well, West Hollywood on average is doing better than LA County as a whole. It's actually doing a bit poorer than Beverly Hills. And secondly, it was really interesting to us. We almost, in this orange area that's surrounding our site, we almost feel like we're looking at a tree desert, which for us, helps us understand why people are interested in tree canopy. And for us, this is a really wonderful site opportunity that we're affirming. And then if we want to talk about ecology and really being productive and contributing regionally, we went ahead and took a look at that too. And here we're looking at the vegetation alliances in the state, and really not seeing very much as meaningful up until we get to the Santa Monica Mountains to the north. Again, affirming an opportunity for ecology. We wanted to understand historically what was going on in West Hollywood. So looking at a map from prior to 1900, learning that our site actually used to be wetlands, right? Really interesting. And not only that, but when we take a look at like the series of creeks and other wetlands regionally, understanding that the site was part of a larger, really productive landscape of the Bayona Creek wetlands, right? So very meaningful from a hydrological standpoint. The historical ecologies have also been mapped by regional experts recently. And we're seeing, our site here, this top circle, we're seeing the different types of wetlands and how that's, used to be contributing down the Las Ciénegas and down to Bayona Creek wetlands. Very, very productive landscape. Here we are zooming in on that historical ecologies map, and really more than half of this site, like this canvas that we're looking at, was freshwater marsh. There's this really beautiful story about these wetlands, and this water story that's coming through reminds us of that water savviness that was popular with people during the Ideas event. We also, really important to understand the context and the legacy of the Gabrielino Tongva people. So in this blue map on the top left, looking at how West Hollywood sits within their former territory. When we look at the maps on the right, it does not appear to be any evidence that there was a village very close by, but we do know that the Tongva people, as hunter-gatherers and as stewards of the land, were very much tied to these productive landscapes. And in particular, looking at a painting that depicted the ways a village that they had in the Bayona wetlands as part of this larger watershed. And also learning with this basket image that they were taking a lot of these species, these reeds and these rushes, to create these beautiful things that contributed to their culture.
So this really sparked our creative thinking, right? So can we create something that is off the land? Can we create something that's really about living with the land and about the local ecology? Yeah, like Ali said, regenerative ecology is something that goes beyond just fixing the urban forest, let's say, right? This is really something that can really make it part of the poetry, part of the experience of the place as well. There's like this strong reference to the history of the site, and really bring the wilderness back, if you will. So it's interesting, right? So if we think of this place as a public space that goes beyond just being a normal street during the day, or just beyond a place where it's comfortable and with a pleasant microclimate, but elevated to this level of like a memorable place that everybody, when you think of the city of West Hollywood, you think of this place. Of course, this area where it's lush and where there's a tree canopy doesn't function as an event space. We already mentioned that. We sort of want those trees up in the air. We don't want them away. We want them elevated in order to still have benefit from the shade that they cast. And here you see this condition again with the movable median elements at the south and north end. And then basically where we connect back to creating something out of the land, like the indigenous tribes did. Think of these elevated baskets where it gets really interesting, right? Because if we want to create a verdant, lush environment, immediately we have to think of irrigation, and these elevated basket structures perfectly can function as water retention elements for the place. So, with this idea, we think we can create something that is so special that it belongs uniquely to West Hollywood. And then during the everyday, which is most days of the year, it's just this super interesting, unique moment that, as far as we know it, doesn't exist anywhere else, only here, where you drive underneath those elevated ecology baskets, let's say. So we did a quick step and at a 3D modeling the site just to get an idea for the mass, for the scale, and how it fits, on the site. So these monumental elevated baskets with trees and plants that are native to the region are hovering above you. Think also during the night, the opportunities for illuminating or some sort of lighting design coming out of this integrated in these structures as well. But it gives you an idea of what the Streetscape Plaza could look like, right? Like this really unique, iconic moment while driving through West Hollywood. And here you can see again, a nice organized situation of the median elements, but when necessary, they can operate and be relocated and moved to the north and south end, so that this entire situation is completely flexible for all sorts of uses, including a continuous tree canopy, right? We don't compromise on that because it's still there. It's just up in the sky where they are celebrated as these local ecology elements. And actually, we went a little step further to give you a really good understanding of what the place looks like with these first visualizations. We're still a little bit working on, okay, how many of the structures fit in the site? Is it 2? Is it 3? 4 maybe? It's all about creating the maximum shade effect when, for whatever happens underneath, right? Which during the everyday life is just people walking over the sidewalk. Here you can see the elevated street table, right? You can see it's almost coplanar with the sidewalk. Here's the Stories Ace Memorial on the left side. And you can see here, this scale. This is a bus, right? So they're pretty high. They're out of the way and creating this wonderful, cool spot where it's lush and verdant, and a little bit more than the 4 trees that we currently have on this stretch, I would say. Here's another view looking north of 2 of the elements, and you can see here, the movable median elements that basically can transform the streetscape, which is the everyday situation, into a place for a gathering when necessary. So from the top, you can see a condition with only 2 of those structures, and as you can tell, there's still a lot of open area. So that's why we also sketching on 3 or maybe 4 of these structures during everyday situation, or you can see here moved north and south. When the Streetscape Plaza operates as something else. And something else could be maybe a market for a day or half a day, or another sort of event. And you can see here what these ecology structures with on top of these water retention elements look like from above. Yeah. PDC Plaza is here on the left side, WeHo Park on the right. This is, of course, a northern tip looking south. Or a completely different type of event, perhaps a speakers event, or maybe a small concert or something like that occurs on the Streetscape Plaza. Sabina.
So where do we, with these first ideas, first observations, analysis, where do we go from here? What we want, of course, is your continued input. Coming from the first ideas exercise to this, we really want to open it up for discussion, and primarily want to focus the conversation on 3 questions. And we're going to go through the chat. I've been monitoring it and acknowledging remarks as best as we can. But keep in mind, please, having seen everything that we presented today, what do you feel and looks most promising about the first ideas that we've shared? In addition to that, what, while we brought together many anecdotes, we brought together the vision boards, what do you feel, though, requires a bit more study? And while we did our best to make sure we incorporate everything that we heard from all of you, it very well could be that we missed something. And so it's important, missed something important. So please tell us, what have we missed? So in this open discussion, it would be great if we could just sort of categorize in these sort of 3 questions. What we could do is go through the chat first, because I see now that there are some messages that came only to me as host and not to everyone, and we'll let the transcript, it will be available later. And then we'll go through the hands. Is that okay? Makes sense? Okay, so from JB iPad Pro, the question was, this is an interesting thing, and I think maybe anyone can speak to this, but a clarifying question: who were the originators of this idea? I think the notion of there being events, because the rest of the question says some residents wish that there were less events in the area. So I think the idea of...
Sounds like a good question for Rick.
Yeah.
Sure, Savina, I think I can at least speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, the city is open space and park poor. So there's been some direction to look for opportunities to expand that, especially as the look ahead is that we're going to be potentially adding a lot of housing in the city going forward. And it's important that we can't just house people without places to get out of the house, so to speak. So the city council gave direction to undertake this study. Part of that direction was to identify a design team, which we've done. They've also looked, they've asked us to look at grant opportunities to help with some funding. I think that was sort of the origin. The direction came from the city council approximately 5 or 6 months ago, I want to say.
Okay, please continue in the chat if you feel maybe there's a follow-up question to that. But the next question came from Susan. If there's more than one Susan, Susan Isaacs. The question was, what did you mean by destination? Jerry, Ali, you can supplement this, but destination was one of the options on the exercise, the first ideas exercise. And I think by that, we meant the connotation was with the place that is, you know, sort of drawing people in, that is a place that you go to, that is a place that is sort of memorable. And that is sort of the working definition of destination that we had there.
That's right. And, you know, it's currently almost a sort of like generic slice of surface street, right? But we really focus on creating a there, if you will, for this area.
Just want to go to Kimberly. I tried to maybe help a bit with this question. Rumbles and textures are difficult for narrow bicycle tires. Absolutely. I think that Jerry comes from the biking capital of the world, the Netherlands, and we are very familiar with the proper surfaces for cycling. And if we use any rumble or texture, rumble strips or textures, they would only be intended for the vehicular portions of the roadway, of the carriageway.
That's right.
Mark, very interesting remark or question, Mark Lehman. How do we address the potential for a metro train subway, which possibly may either go below ground or above ground in this location?
Sunita, I think I can address that one.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the alignments would entail the subway being underground. At this location and the arc that's projected, it would be a little bit further west under West Hollywood Park, and it would be down, I think I recall, somewhere in the approximately 60 to 80 feet below ground. So it's exceedingly deep, but really great question.
Susan Isaacs, by moving the median, the remark was, by moving the medians, does this mean that the road traffic will be diverted at times? Indeed, not dissimilar to when it does occur today for the to accommodate temporary opportunities for gathering. And we will be studying this more just to make this even more efficient and even more functional. Maybe anyone else want to add to that?
Savina, I think what the other thing that we've looked at as part of this is that when there is a closure of the road, there will be turnarounds and staging areas for first responders to be right there. And that we've already spoken with Metro because there is a bus line that goes down San Vicente, and they already have in place alternate routes that they've been using during the annual closures that are already occurring. But those are both definite considerations.
Very, very important aspect. Yes, absolutely.
Can I say something? It seems like everything goes via chat, but there's also the opportunity to just speak out, right?
No, I wanted to just go through the chat because it was there's a lot that's only I'm seeing as the host. It was directed only to me. I want to make sure it's open to everybody, and then I wanted to go through the hands if that's okay.
Cool.
Richard Carlos, thank you. You said you had me at tree canopy. That's very nice. Craig's iPad to everyone. Okay, so this everyone saw. The traces of the AIDS monument are meant to be lit at the top at night, evoking a candlelit vigil. Yep. Would the trees in front of the monument detract from that? Really good question.
The answer is hopefully not. We don't intend to box the AIDS memorial into sort of, let's say, a perimeter of dense vegetation. Of course, there's a lot of visibility that the memorial deserves.
So I would also just add that we've also met with Friends of the AIDS Memorial, and so we're having an ongoing discussion with them to make sure that what we're proposing in this design is very much aligned and synergistic with the monument.
I'm going to pause and I'm going to pause in the chat and let's just go to the hands. Rick, I see your hand up. Rick Forrest, please. Hi.
Hey there, how you doing?
Super.
What I wanted to respond to was the canopy aspect of the event. I loved it when the trees were on the ground because that really felt enfolding, like you were becoming part of a new space. Having the trees elevated like that really takes them away from being in contact with them. And well, I wonder about the maintenance of the trees, how big they can get, whereas if they're in the ground, I think they can get very large, and it would be, I think it'd be a much nicer environment. Maybe you can put as many trees as you'd like, but maybe you could have a mixture of trees in the ground and trees up above. And also you possibly miss the opportunity for people to actually use that upper level to access and walk through. That might be dangerous, but it's a possibility. You're gonna have to have some way of maintenance people to get up there. Why not try and open that up so that in a limited way, the public could have a view? Otherwise, they're not going to really see the trees and the environment up there for some time as it grows. And you know, it could be dangerous under certain circumstances. So that's my comment. But I love your ideas, and I hope that they'll be able to be activated in some way in a reasonable amount of time, because I know how long these projects can take.
Thank you. Really good points. And indeed, we are looking at a combination of ecology, let's say, on top of the water retention structures, in combination with potentially some trees on the ground level. These are the first ideas, and you were spot on. We're indeed looking at a sort of combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. Should we get
and maintenance noted?
Yeah.
We're very much aware that these structures, of course, need access, etc. And we can easily integrate that.
iPhone RG, you wanna unmute and we see your hand. iPhone RG. Okay, we'll come back. Maybe they stepped away. Lynn M. Hoopengartner, see your hand. Do you wanna? There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
I love pretty much everything I'm seeing. I love the incorporation of the elevated environment along with the trees. I agree with Mr. Forrest a little bit in that, you know, it's harder to visualize the trees from below, but you can from a distance, and there's only so much you're going to be able to do here. My concern is that those pillars, oops, picture went away. Those pillars could be a traffic hazard, and that if some way in the design to incorporate that your mobile medians protect those pillars, because it's only a matter of days before those get hit by a car. And so if the mobile medians were positioned in a way to protect those pillars, you could obviously put them on either side of the street and not in the middle, but I think that would really mess up your design. Just a thought, there might be a way to incorporate the Gabrieliano patterns from their basketry into the undersurfaces of those containers.
Yeah. Good point.
And I love the cistern idea in the, you know, incorporated into the design. Don't love the idea of effectively rumble strips on the street because of the noise component. It's very loud to the people in the park, et cetera, with the rumbling. I understand the goal, but I think I would be more in favor of encouraging that goal with visual color variations than with the rumble. And it's not terribly ADA friendly from a crossing perspective. In fact, speaking to someone who's had to use a wheeled environment in the past, it's really not ADA friendly if you need to cross it or participate in an event in the middle of that park or go to the farmer's market. Going down that street in a wheelchair or other device is going to be, or even just on a wobbly cane, is going to be difficult. The medians, I love the mobile idea. I'm obviously concerned about operationally, especially the bigger those trees get, the water requirements. And all it takes is one of our 100-degree days and the water failure for 24 hours, and we've got a dead mobile planter. And so one of my big concerns would be the maintenance of that. And last but not least, and this relates to the trees and the AIDS memorial, is actually what I would be interested in almost seeing is how could this flow better into the park and connect to the park instead of being a standalone. I love that it's really iconic destination, very cool, but maybe how could it integrate a little bit more into the park? And this is back to Mr. Forrest's comment, maybe almost be a ramp way up to visitors to visit the upper canopy. Obviously, huge safety issues. That's another whole conversation, but it's a wonderful space, and it would be sad that no one could actually participate in it. Thank you.
All really great ideas. And I think that with your idea or with your notion of the patterning and the texture on the underside of the canopies yields a whole other suite of possibilities when it comes to nighttime experience, to lighting, and that is already, you know, a really nice statement. So that is something we are, along with everything else that you mentioned, so it's good we are recording so we can return back to all those important points, because I think there was a lot there.
As clear as plain surfaces, they almost become projection surfaces.
That too. They can also
so you can go either way. Or both.
I'm gonna, if it's okay, jump to HP, who has both the hand raised, and then that's where I paused in the chat. HP, did you want to mention what you mentioned in the chat, but then also speak to anything else? You're unmuted now. HP. I saw you unmuted, now muted again. The question that was in the chat was, what will happen to the barriers in the event of a car accident? Will the canopy fall down? Jerry?
Well, no. So the barriers or the canopy?
I think the barriers, the median planters is one question. If you know, in a car accident, then also I think the pole, as the previous remark was mentioning, that they could be hit by a car.
I mean, yeah, they theoretically could be hit by a car, and then we have to engineer it so it's sturdy enough that unfortunately the damage only remains with the car and not to the structures. Of course, it's a matter of proper structural engineering.
Yeah. And also the vertical elements are not foreign to streetscapes, right? There are often many poles, utility poles, light poles, all these other sort of vertical elements in the streetscape that have to always be accommodated for as well.
Trees is for example something, right? So, and we actually hope with this idea that we can also consolidate many of those elements. Maybe we can eliminate a street light lamp post or two, or 6 or 8, right? And we mentioned trees before, although we completely share the ambition to have more trees on ground level too, right? But in order to be as flexible as possible, we thought this idea would be really good. And besides that, it has an additional effect of being very unique and attractive.
Michaela, did you want to unmute, and you have your hand raised? Yep.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I just wanted to introduce myself to this audience. I'm really glad that you're able to have this session. My name is Michaela Randolph, and I'm a senior watershed specialist with Hilda Bay. I also serve as one of 2 watershed coordinators for LA County Safe Clean Water Program, which is the program to improve our water quality and ideally increase our water supply. So I was really happy to see so many of the kind of water and ecology elements that are included in the streetscape. And as you all continue, I can drop my information in the chat, but as you continue to engage with community, one of my primary responsibilities is outreach and engagement in this specific area. West Hollywood is part of the Central Santa Monica Bay watershed area for the County Safe Clean Water Program. So I just wanted to introduce myself in this setting. And like I said, I'll leave my email in the chat. Thank you so much.
Wow, fantastic. And thank you for joining our little presentation.
Thank you. MJ, your hand is up. Love to hear from you.
Oh, great. Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. No, but thank you right off the bat for, looking at what was originally here and trying to make the goal to go back to the original Mother Nature design. I mean, anything where there's less concrete and more green as much as possible. I'm sure you're aware of the studies that have been done too with trees versus just green lawns have just such a much better effect on like societies and the public's mental health and calming. I mean, not to be facetious, but I mean, I've lived here a long time and there used to be a lot more birds here. I don't hardly hear them or see them. Now we have some parrots flying overhead, which is a little daunting. But the old birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. And you all mentioned something about LA City not having that many trees. We saw our new mayor, Madam Karen Bass, being inaugurated on Sunday, and she had mentioned one of her goals is to get a tree canopy going, and they're going to, start planting trees and getting the canopy there, and try to combat the urban heat island effect that we're in here. And I don't know how factual it is, but I've been, hearing from one environmental scientist I met on when we were canvassing for the election. She came from New Orleans and was saying, oh my God, the sun is so much brighter here in Los Angeles compared to anywhere else she's ever been in her studies. And I mean, I can't help think that that's part of the effect. And I thought it was just me, but noticing it obviously that the sun has nothing to absorb anymore because we've lost so much green space. So, I mean, so it's good to hear, because I was nervous when I saw we're going to do this design here and all that. I was like, oh no, what's going to happen now? What else? So it was good to hear that the goal is to combat all that's happening here and to make, WeHo greener, which should be, so that, less, at the end of the day, long story short, less concrete, more trees.
That's right.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, ideally the outcome is this green verdant stretch of San Vicente that, for now could become just this portion and maybe becomes some sort of a ripple effect for the rest of the way that the city treats its streetscapes. I'm going to go back to the chat just to mix it up. Kimberly Winnick wrote to me directly, how would the baskets be accessed? At the moment, they're not accessible, but as we've been hearing, that could be a very interesting consideration. They only would be accessible, for maintenance and operations. And would they need barriers for safety? I think we already addressed that. We would need to engineer them and design them so that they're crash
Proof.
absorbent. Yep, proof. Susan Isaacs wrote, I don't understand the purpose of planting trees on top of the irrigation structures. Yeah, the intent is to create this continuous canopy while also maintaining the utmost flexibility for those temporary, to accommodate those temporary opportunities for gathering. And once you lift certain elements off of the ground level, that allows for both shade, but also, you know, basically a vast open space that can be used for various programming. Anyone else wants to add to that while I sift through yeah, this animation kind of touched on that.
And I think, Savina, the intent is, you explained it, is to basically create an ecosystem up there, a marshland or an ecosystem that would be used for migrating birds, for pollinators, for all the wildlife that has no real place in the city to nest and forage and propagate. And so this is thought of as a restorative strategy, returning some of the health of the ecosystem back to earlier origins. So
Exactly.
that's why right now it's not conceived of as a place for people. It's really a restorative ecosystem up in the air.
Yeah. We're basically creating larger swaths for habitat creation. That's sort of one of the goals here. Kimberly could be treated like New York City High Line. Very interesting. Yeah, if a whole other layer of accessibility needs to be considered for sure with that once we allow the public to go there, but nothing is impossible. Richard wrote, that's not really a tree canopy. Yeah, indeed. It's definitely an architectural structure, an architectural canopy. If you wanted to elaborate on that, feel free to raise your hand. But we, you know, also architectural shade and those sorts of responses were also very prevalent and resonated a lot in the first idea. So that was also something we were trying to incorporate in the design, because those images were resonated quite a bit in that magnet exercise that we did in WeHo Park. Kimberly very noted, she was mentioning that as drawn, the underside of the baskets feel very industrial and not green. And I think that, you know, with whether or not we explore different aspects of the surface, whether they're perforated, much like baskets are, you know, that perforation, all of that that is definitely, you know, I think making all four of us, because our colleague Marielle is also on the line, very excited to continue working on these, because we want them to feel very special and light and not heavy at all as you drive or walk or experience this space. Okay, let's go back to the hand so it's not my voice. Mark Lehman, if there's more than one Mark.
Yeah, hi, Mark Lehman here. How are you?
Hi.
I just so you all remember, I've been involved with the AIDS Monument Project since its inception. Just a couple of additional thoughts. I mean, I love the way this idea really would create a destination that I think hopefully would complement the AIDS Monument and make it sort of a double destination, because we really don't have any destinations except for, you know, business destinations in the city. So I think that would be really remarkable. Just a personal thought from my end is, because we don't have a lot of green space in West Hollywood, and the fact that our two parks, even West Hollywood Park right next door and Plummer Park, have a lot of green open space, because that was the demand for that. You know, we have very few trees, relatively speaking. So from my perspective, the more trees on the ground level, the better, because it really makes for a warmer, destination environment for us who live in this city. There's not too many places to go to where you can hang out under the trees. And it's interesting, you had a couple of photos or images earlier, one of them of tree canopies. One of them reminded me of some of the parks in Tokyo. And in Tokyo, they have all those spectacular cherry trees. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch in the spring. It's almost religious in Japan, how the population comes and sits underneath the trees. And we don't really have any place like that. So I know it's a busy environment, but any kind of additional green trees that work well with the park and hopefully work well with the PDC would be really, really wonderful.
Thank
Great.
you, Mark. It's only our aim, yeah, in this project to be, you know, a complementary neighbor. So I think that this is a very important thing to keep as we move forward. Derek wrote to everyone. I don't know if you want to elaborate or I can read it. How has the safety and welfare of the pedestrians been addressed? Lots of hazardous situations in this design. How will the elevated baskets be cared for and when? How do these ideas address water conservation specifically? I don't see any benefit to the community in these ideas. There's a lot there. The safety and welfare of the pedestrians being addressed. I think that when we discuss the principles and the strategies, the notion of having delineations and very clear paths for traffic. For example, today, if you recall, the existing bike lane is merely a shoulder off of the carriageway. It is our intent in these initial sketches to make a really clear delineated bike path, for example. The same for all the other realms. So the pedestrians are separated from everything at the moment with the notion of a series of bollards. Just making sure that everything is very clearly delineated is putting basically the safety of all modes of mobility in the foreground. The elevated baskets, the second part of your question, there's a whole maintenance layer of this, yes, that needs to be addressed. These are just first ideas. But we have ideas of how these can be operated and maintained, and that can be definitely a topic that we present moving forward because it's come up a few times today. So I think it's of course of interest. How do these ideas attract? Oh, water conservation. So there's the cistern component. Colleagues, please feel free to intervene. But there's a cistern component also in these elevated structures, in which any sort of water that can be harvested can be collected in these areas, as well as we didn't even talk about the materiality for the streetscape itself. But of course, we're considering a materiality that would allow for that would definitely allow for proper drainage and management of any water or surges, for example, which is also very common that might occur.
Yeah, we as an office, we have a substantial experience and an active portfolio, actually, of projects in arid climates, in the deserts, and here stateside in Nevada and Arizona, as well as in the Middle East, even, where we create green, lush environments. And basically they're all restorative and regenerative ecology projects, basically. And with today's technology that we have available, we know how to source water sustainably from, let's say, sustainable sources, mostly wastewater, which includes gray water as well as black water, that we then channel to our landscape, where it's filtered and cleansed, and then stored for further use in irrigating our landscape right? So with the drought in Southern California, effectively, it's a desert, right? Desert environment more and more. We're using those techniques, and we intend to use those techniques as well as in this project to irrigate the project itself, and maybe even areas beyond the project. So the water component is super important. Everything is about reclaiming water, or so collecting water, harvesting water, and storing it on site for further use.
Nancy's question was, where are the water fountains? Is that a question about the existing water fountains in the PDC Plaza, or maybe drinking fountains? And
Or was it
she
about the
loved-
water savviness
And she loved the movable meeting
idea?
form. I don't know if Nancy wants to clarify. Maybe Nancy's not here, but we can move to Leslie. Leslie wanted to vocalize. They think there needs to be more trees along the sidewalks between Melrose and Santa Monica. Still too many hard surfaces and concrete. Yes, I think that we need to. I think that was a very common remark today about as much verdance that we can bring to the streetscape as possible is a welcomed notion. We're going to take that moving forward.
Just a little side note. Originally, our scope was to look at the streetscape, the street service only, right, from curb to curb. Only recently, we've started conversation with the city to extend our scope basically to include also the sidewalk. So these visualizations don't necessarily include that situation yet.
Yeah. Patrick, thank you for your remark. To everyone, most promising the street lift, meaning the table, that this is all very a continuous condition. Textured pattern looks very inviting, he said. Upscale and creates a sense of place. Most excited about this, very effective and such a nice relief from the painted rainbow sidewalks nearby that look dingy. Thank you, Patrick. Leslie, thank you for your other remark. The person on the sidewalk won't see the trees on top of the design element.
As you can tell, they're not like entirely horizontal, right? They're tilted on purpose in all sorts of direction to create visibility onto that top, let's say, of the structures from a certain distance, of course.
The next remark, Stuart, sorry?
No.
Oh, sorry. Stuart wrote, sorry, but these structures are in conflict with existing structures, PDC, AIDS project, children's playground. These elements that your limited 30 people wanted exist within the park itself, which is where we want people to go and enjoy. We do not understand creating a street park, and we do not wish to have 20 to 30 events in the area. Wrong direction.
Maybe Rick. Rick,
well, I think
diverting the difficult questions to you.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure who we are, but
yeah.
I think the street is already closed for events annually. This has been a regular process that is limited by the city council to so many days per year. Each one has to be approved and go through an extensive analysis about the impacts, whether it's noise or other considerations. But the gathering in the park is a very different thing. And if you were to have 2,000 people all gathering on the lawn wouldn't survive. And I think, as I said earlier, that there is a real lack of gathering space in the city, and this has historically been where large crowds do gather. And so we're just saying, let's acknowledge the fact that this occurs and make it properly designed and ecologically responsible in doing so.
And safe.
And safe, absolutely.
iPhone RG asked if we could distribute a link to the recording. Indeed, at the end, we're also going to throw in the chat the current site that's been set up on the city site so that all this information can be accessible.
Hello?
Yeah. Nancy asked to everyone, how did the trees get watered? There'll be an irrigation system for sure in place, a proper engineered system to make sure that everything is properly maintained. Also imagine each of these as like little pots, right? So everything that we water will never get lost. It will always be contained in the structures or in the planters themselves. That's also very important to us to have no loss. Interesting question. I think we should bring this to the next presentation. How many people, also from Nancy, how many people can you accommodate for a rally, a concert, a pop-up shopping event? There are metrics we can totally use, X number of square feet per person for each of these scenario. And I think that, we did some initial setups here. However, we can totally give proper metrics in future presentations. They range from very, very small intimate events to something much larger.
Exactly, and that's where the movable planters functioning as basically the framing of the event space comes in handy, right? So we can basically determine the scale of the event also with that.
Another remark, RG, they like trees, but on ground, like structure design, but concerned about seismic issues with tree weight. Structure will compress space, encouraging traffic to slow.
Yeah. I mean, we've done very similar projects before, so we are very much aware of the seismic components that we have to work with our structural engineers, and that's all workable.
HP wrote to me only, so will MTA rip up the avenue after all this work is done and money is spent? Why not wait?
Well, again, I think the MTA, the metro, if it were to come to this part of the city, would be underground, and there would be a station on Santa Monica Boulevard. So there wouldn't be any need to rip this up going forward. That's at least the current plan. There is no above ground rail proposed.
There was a remark that we can hug trees when they're on the ground. Absolutely. Kimberly was writing, right, Rick feels industrial underneath, but seems to also offer New York City Highline opportunity. That's great. And I think the next one also, this Nancy wrote also pertaining to the previous remark about the heat island effect. Surface or the ground should be light color to reflect the heat and not absorb it. Also has a lot to do with the unit that we use, and that we could talk about that in future remarks, but very important that all can be mitigated, all that heat components. Rick Forrest wrote to me, I have to go, but I love the conversation and the potential. Look forward to more updates. Thank you so much. And he wrote his email, and feel free to leave all of that as well in the chat, any contact information. Brad Kiesler, to everyone, cobblestones and rails would be very dangerous for bicycles. The ecology structures look very expensive to build and very possible to be dated in a few years. I love the tree canopy, which would also give more shade than structures. Do not need to move planters in the median, could have flowers in addition to trees, like on Sunset Plaza area? Would you allow concerts? Hope not. As for the events component, I think we would leave that to the city. What events, we don't decide that. We would only accommodate what programming we are given. However, with the cobblestones and the rails, you know, of course, the ambition or the goal is to not create a dangerous situation. On the contrary, you want something safe. And there are examples, I think, you know, it's all over the world where the coexistence of unit paving, not necessarily cobblestones, but unit paving, as well as rails, as well as all different modes of mobility can coexist. It's all about the detailing. And I think that, you know, if after these first sketches, we can immediately start to demonstrate how all of those can safely circulate on a single surface. And we would love to sort of demonstrate and talk about that. I know Jerry can lecture for hours on unit paving and
Yes.
and all the unit paving actually that we've installed that works. For the bicycles, of course, we would probably promote a different material because that's not very unit paving is not always so conducive to cycling. But I think moving forward in these visualizations and ideas, we want to talk about materiality for sure.
I have an idea. All of you who are still on the Zoom right now, let's organize a road trip to my home country, Netherlands, and I can show you where I grew up. There's tram rails everywhere, and as you may know, there's bicycles everywhere. As in this design that we propose, we don't have any rails projected in the bike lanes. That's not a good idea. However, pedestrians and vehicular traffic, that's no problem. I wasn't kidding about the road trip, actually, but I think it would be fun.
It would be a boat trip. And then a road trip once we get there. Kimberly, perhaps green the canopies with growth up them.
There I am.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I didn't know I could unmute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
Oh, there you are, Brad. That was your remark.
Well, going back to hinge onto that, I didn't see any reason for having planters that move on rails. I think it'd be better just to have them permanent. And yeah, like I said, to have flowers in them maybe, and the tall trees there, like Palo Verde, is that the tree that has the yellow bloom on it in the spring, I think, and there's some in my neighborhood, you see. And it has a small leaf also, so it would deteriorate naturally and you wouldn't have to save on maintenance that way. And yeah, okay. What do you think?
Yeah, we started with a continuous median as an idea because we think it's also, besides providing green and color and a little touch of nature, you know, safety is an issue. However, that immediately collided with the ambition for this place also to be an open event space, right? So that's why we came up with the idea of movable median elements, which allows us to transform the streets with the median where these planters live most of the year into a more flexible gathering area. So that's why they're movable.
Oh.
Jerry, there's another really important aspect, and that is that when they move out of the way to get that flexibility for different festivals or fairs or events or vigils or rallies or whatever it may be, they function as bollards, as traffic stopping devices. So instead of having to rent K-rails and bring out these concrete barricades that we do 20 or 30 times a year, they function as a place that cars must stop, that they can no longer get through. So they're providing a public safety component as well as moving out of the way so that there's the greatest amount of use on a temporary basis. But the other important thing is
See that.
for 300 and 300 plus days, 330 days out of the year, this is still a street that's functioning in a normal way, and so it has to be treated as its normal configuration as well. And I think that's the balance that they're trying to find.
Mhm. Okay.
We're getting close to the end of time, but I think we can extend by a little bit more and try and capture as much as we can, because there's a lot of goodies in here, a lot of good content. So Kimberly, perhaps green the canopies with growth up them. That's something interesting. So that would require a planting bed at the base of each pole or vertical element. Also would require a kind of different approach. We can explore the notion of a trellis, but the canopies on the underside at the moment are casting shade, so very little will grow at the moment up it, unless they are, a lattice or transparent. So that is something that can become. Mhm.
Yeah, and we've this is not
A done deal. Yeah.
no, what I wanted to say, we've worked on like sculptural structures of quite a monumental scale before in the public realm. So we're familiar with the structural engineering efforts that are needed in order to make these things work. And the weight, the sheer weight of those ecology landscapes, let's say, if you will, those dioramas that are on top of the structures, almost rule out for certain sort of like an open lattice structure, right? So as you can see, it's really small now, but there's a sort of perforation indicated on the underside, let's say, of the baskets, and we intend to elaborate the design ideas for that. I just want to like re-emphasize that these are just the few ideas, bringing together all the remarks and the ideas that were given to us in the first community event.
Mm-hmm. Michaela put her contact information in the chat. Thank you so much. Lynn, follow-up remark, are you planning on having water sources for wildlife in the elevated planters?
I can answer that one. So Lynn, we'd love to explore that, because we certainly understand the wildlife value to having water up there. So yes, we totally intend on exploring that idea as we continue to flesh these ideas out. Thank you.
Oh, Mark had a good question. If it was unclear to anyone, that would this concept allow San Vicente to remain as 2 lanes north and 2 lanes south? Yes, it would not be reduced to 2 lanes in total. If that was thought of, the same amount of lanes would remain. Yeah. Oh, Nancy's question was about
Sabina, actually, if I could jump in on that
yeah,
one
please,
too.
Please.
So yes, it would be identical to what it currently is in terms of number of lanes, but it could be designed so that only one side or the other is closed off, so that in theory one could have like an art exposition or something on the west side adjacent to the park, and still have two-way traffic set up on the east side, for example. So that's part of the flexibility that Jerry mentioned earlier, is that it doesn't even necessitate full street closure. So there's a lot of different ways this could be configured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, that's really important, and it's good that we emphasize that. Nancy's question was about drinking fountains. Totally, yes. There's a whole. This is meant to be, like Jerry mentioned, the sort of first sketches to sort of bring to life the vision boards and the anecdotes and everything that we heard so far. But there's a whole other layer of equipment that can also be thought of, and drinking fountains is another element that, of course, should be a very important part of this, that will be considered in streetscape elements. typically not occurring on streetscapes, but I think also we can look at that and what the sort of infrastructure is for that. Brad, I see your remark in the chat about the Palo Verde. Yes, important remark about the graffiti. Structures look like a good place for graffiti. There's definitely details and different kinds of, how do you say, Jerry, what is that, scratch proof, and that we had in Las Vegas that we treated the structures with to sort of mitigate graffiti and vandalism as much as possible, but very good point.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't sort of avoid graffiti usually when our designs are, let's say, flamboyant or like sculptural or playful in and of themselves. They seem to attract less graffiti artists, let's say. But like I said, Banksy wannabes cannot be avoided. So there's then we're going to rely on maintenance strategies.
Mm-hmm. Nancy had another question about the estimated number of people. I think that was already mentioned in another remark, and we can also provide metrics in future presentations. Brad's question: what crowds are you thinking about, like political gatherings or a small Sunday trio, but no large concerts or dances? Rick, do you want to speak to the programming of the
It's basically
space?
what's already,
whatever the current calendar is. Yeah.
It's mostly the current calendar, and then allowing for impromptu, there was a vigil last month, there's rallies that come up, there's festivals that arise, but that we do have a regular calendar for most of it already, and so that's most likely where it's going to stay, although there's been some in the previous community discussions, there's been a request for a farmer's market, say on Sunday morning or something like that. So I think there are elements in the park that are already useful for certain things, but as a streetscape plaza, I think it can do a lot of other accommodations that the park cannot. There is a gathering space in the park near the steps, and the question that was brought up earlier, but the capacity of that and the orientation, there's no shade, it's full sun. So this is seen as a complement to extend opportunities at the streetscape level that one cannot do in a park.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to reiterate, there of course are questions and emphasis, let's say, on those sporadic events, but during most of the year it's just a normal street. Well, not normal street, right? Because we really want to create this experience when you drive through this stretch of San Vicente, and sort of this wow moment, right? So, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't exist anywhere else except here. This is ours, right? This is the city of West Hollywood. This beautiful, cool, almost poetic, maybe even slightly surrealistic moment in the streetscape of the city.
We're coming up on the final 10 minutes, so forgive me, but I'm going to start to filter questions and then we'll make the chat accessible, the transcript of the chat accessible. The question about from HP: so will the tending of the plan be government employees, more pensions, costs, etc.? I love the idea, but how is this being managed financially? Funding for the project.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer the government part. I think it's the same that goes into the park space or any other space that needs to be maintained. We have a facilities and field services staff that are already engaged with this. They're going to be looking at it and advising on maintenance and other aspects of it before it would ever get built. But again, the basis for this is that the city is very, very, very underserved with open space and green space by all accounts of other urbanized areas. And we're built out. There are no other spaces. So we're looking for opportunities where it makes sense to study other places for people to gather and to experience things that they wouldn't otherwise experience. Maybe there's a food festival here. You know, we in the past, I know in the PDC there was an ice cream festival. There's art exhibitions. Maybe there's a car show. I mean, who knows what in the future might be considered that cannot be accommodated right now in the city that would be welcomed by the community members. And so if you don't have a space to gather, like many other cities around the world are based on these gathering spaces, zocolos and piazzas and plazas and plazas, and almost every urbanized area has a tradition of a gathering space. And so in West Hollywood, I don't think there's any shortage of ideas of how the community might find this of value. That there's just not an opportunity right now to come together as a large community. But again, this is temporary. It's meant to be a street for most of the time, a normal street, and it would be carefully curated through all, you know, the city council would, there'd be an open public discussion on any proposed event that could ever occur here as part of the process.
That's really well said, Rick. And I think there's a series of messages in the chat that are saying, I'm in, yeah, I'm also in. And I think it has to do with Jerry's trip, which I think suggestion, which I think now provoked a lot of excitement, which is good.
I mean it still.
You're hosting everybody.
Your host is Jerry.
Also a very nice remark that I think refocuses, the intent here, which is that it would be on, from MJ, a focus that can be on a great majority of the days and months when there are no events for the health of the space. Indeed. Kimberly, the creeping fig species, we will keep in mind. I think I'm gonna pass that after this call to Ali, because this is her expertise about the specific kinds of vegetation for the area. So we'll make note of that. We got some people's emails. That's great. Is the speakers platform still in the plan? Brad, there is a podium. Jerry, maybe go to the rendering and just point to the speakers platform that is in the AIDS monument.
This block, right, that sticks out?
Just to point that out.
Yeah, where was that? It could be turned around to face the monument itself or turned around to face this gathering place, correct?
Correct.
Yes, Brad, exactly. That's, I think, the intent, and the design isn't finalized. That's something that we'll be working with the foundation to finalize the design. But yeah, that's the intent.
I think we can touch on this in the future as well, but the types of equipment it was asked what types of equipment will be used or needed to move the barriers, the medians, I think is the question, the medians. So the fact that they'll be on rails.
Yeah. Yeah, there's multiple ways of doing that. It can be self-powered, it can be towed, it can be, some sort of winch system.
Yeah. This is MJ has participated in vigils and protests in the park, noting the amount of room that there is there. We'll make note of that. I'm just coming in at the final 5 minutes, so I just want to make sure if there's something that we didn't. RG wrote, thank you for thoughtful, engaging ideas, intuitive direction. Thank you. An idea to connect with the SF MoMA, an element at the SF MoMA. We'll take a look at that. These locations you are mentioning also have large green spaces. And there was a mention about the farmer's market on Melrose Place on Sundays. I'm not sure if that's meant to also be housed here, but that's something we can take note of and look at as well. So with this, I think I'm a pretty thorough person. I feel like I've gone through most of this, even the ones that have been personally sent to me. So I hope I'm gonna just give like 20 seconds to see if there's any like final hand raise. In the meantime, I wanted to put in the chat the city website. No, I wrote just to Mark Lehman. That's not good. Everyone in the meeting. Now it's to everyone. WeHo.org. Sorry, Mark, you got a direct love note from me with the city site. To everyone, I wrote now WeHo.org city government site. You'll see that in the chat. Jerry, if you don't mind, go to the next slide. Okay, so we don't want this to be, this was a really robust, almost now 2 hours, which we really love and enjoy. But we definitely don't want this to be the end of the dialogue. In fact, we have other avenues for this to continue. We will come back in January, shortly after the new year. We have to pin down an appropriate date. But in the meantime, and always feel free, this line of communication with our dear friend and colleague, Garen Yawlis with the City of West Hollywood, the project manager for the project on that side, together with Rick. His email is up on the screen. And the city website that I've just flashed is now in the chat. So please make use of that, because we want to continue to hear from you, because we want this to be successful.
Savina, thank you so much. And I really want to thank your team. Oh, sorry, Brad, did you have a final comment?
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, I saw you light up. No, I really wanted to thank the team. I appreciate how interested you've been in hearing thoughts from the community, and the challenge of sort of trying to coalesce them and pull them into something that would really meet as many goals as possible. And also I wanted to offer special thanks to Garen Yawlis, who is our project, our architectural and urban designer for the City of West Hollywood, who's put so much into making this happen and is really a guiding force for this. So I know Garen wants to continue hearing from everybody that as comments and thoughts come together. And so we will be planning going forward an additional community meeting to sort of take the comments from today and test some additional ideas. And then we will be putting together some cost estimates and other technical information, and then bringing it to the City Council for consideration. So that's sort of the long-term where this is going to go. But thank you so much to the Melk team, to Jerry and Hallie and Savina. We really appreciate all your work, and to the community members, really terrific comments. We've been taking lots of notes and really thoughtful. So thank you so much for taking the time. And we look forward to the next one. So thank you all.
Okay.
Also, on behalf of Melk, thank you very much, everybody. Hope to
Thank
talk to
you.
you soon.
Thank you all.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you all.